Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Couch Coaches. He's Jeff. He's Brian. I'm Denny. And we know sports. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about one of the poll questions that we had earlier in the week. Which do we like better, pro football or college football? So this is an interesting topic. It's a topic that I stayed up at night looking at the ceiling trying to figure out which one it is, reasons why which one it is. So I don't know if you guys want me to start or if you guys want to start.
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
I don't care who starts, but I do want to say one thing before we get into it. I'm going to let you start, but I want to say that we love football.
Yeah.
We do.
All
We
three
just
of
love
us.
football.
And, you know, I watch high school football. I watch college football. I watch pro football. And if I can't find anything else on the radio on a Friday night, I listen to a high school game, and I don't even know who's playing.
Yeah.
So you got to remember, football is king.
Yeah.
Yes.
When it comes to be the first weekend of August and the Hall of Fame game's playing and it's Cleveland versus Detroit, I don't care. And I don't care about their second, third string being there. I just want to watch football.
Yeah.
And then when college football starts and it's Louisiana Sisters for the Blind and Deaf or playing the Michigan girls' school, I don't care. I'm watching because it's football.
Yes.
So, but again, I thought long and hard about this topic and thought about my life, to be honest with you, and where I was and what I liked. And because I've kind of went back and forth. And when I was young, I was more of a pro football guy always. You know, when I was real young, it was pounded into my head to be a Vikings fan because I grew up in South Dakota, as everybody knows. And,
Yeah.
And everybody's from South Dakota, apparently.
Apparently.
And
I mean, the whole NFL.
you know, we were 12 miles from the Minnesota border, so Minnesota was the team, and that's what everybody watched up there. It was a game that was on every week. When I was a little kid, we didn't have NFL ticket, we didn't have Red Zone, we didn't have anything like that. You had your two channels that were on.
Well,
it was CBS and NBC at that time.
You're my age.
Yeah.
We listen to games on the radio.
Yeah,
And we can envision it in our heads because we listen to it all the time.
yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we had favorite people that were calling it on the radio.
Yeah, but you know, at that time though, still pro football. There was always one game a week on, one game on CBS, one game on NBC. There wasn't a Sunday night game. There wasn't a game in London. There wasn't anything like that. It was just, and honestly, I looked forward to that. I looked forward to those Sunday games. I looked forward to the Monday night game that started at 8 p.m. Central.
And Hank Williams Jr.
Oh, that was even before Hank Williams Jr. I'm talking back in the Howard Cosell days.
Yeah, but the entrance. You know, the
Back in those
entrance.
days, it was dun 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 dun
There you
dun,
go.
dun dun dun
Yeah, right.
dun dun
iconic.
dun.
And it gets you excited when you heard it. You're like, it's time!
Yeah, exactly. And my parents let me stay up till halftime, which was usually about 9:30, and on a Monday night, and I was so excited about that. So when I was a little kid, I really liked pro football. When I got to being about junior high or so, I started to dabble into college football a little bit. And I kind of started to see what it was like. You know, I saw what it was, what Notre Dame was all about and why everybody really liked Notre Dame. Saw kind of what USC was about and why everybody really liked them. And then I stumbled upon Nebraska. And I decided Nebraska was going to be my team because they were close to us and they were on TV a lot. You know, there was a lot of games of the week because that was, again, all that we had at that time was just the games of the week. There was a game of the week on ABC, and there wasn't a night game. There wasn't anything else. And that was when Jeff really talked about getting to listen to the radio announcers on college football. You know, my first games that I can really remember listening to was Kent Pavelka. And Kent Pavelka was such a Nebraska homer, and it was so much fun. Loved listening to him. You know, he gets so excited about plays. I remember one time they were playing Oklahoma State, and they got the fumbled snap for the extra point, and I don't even remember who it was, threw it into the end zone and got the extra point, and he, double extra point, Nebraska just got the double extra point. What's a double extra point? So I was all confused about that then. So I really went through that long spell where I really liked college football. Nebraska was my team. They still are my team. But then it got to be the 2000s, and Nebraska just wasn't quite as good anymore. And I started to lose interest in college football because, let me tell you, when they were good, I watched every team and every game because I wanted to see how this game is going to affect Nebraska's ranking. And so I was really interested in Oregon State and Washington State. And I was interested in
Oklahoma versus Kansas, Oklahoma versus Texas.
Or whoever was playing, Syracuse versus Boston College, because it might affect where Nebraska's ranked next week. So I really went through that, but then, like I said, when it got to be the 2000s, they just weren't quite as good anymore, and it just wasn't as fun for me anymore. So I kind of started to get back into pro football. And even now, to this day, I would say, due to probably the last maybe 10 years or so of San Francisco actually being good again, and they went through a long dry spell where they weren't very good.
Dry spell.
There was 2-14 years.
It was a pretty long
and there
dry
was,
spell.
Jim Druckenmiller years,
They were
and
great in the 90s.
they were great in the early 90s. The late
Early
90s, they were okay. Early 2000s, they were okay. But then we had that long spell there.
Oh, guess what? They weren't
Elvis
good
Grbac,
again.
yeah.
Guess who they were good
Kaepernick.
again?
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh. Brought him back. Brought him back, buddy.
Yeah, and actually...
And I get it. I would lose interest with Jim Harbaugh as my coach of my team, too.
Actually, that was when
That's
they
when he
started to
gained
get better
interest.
again. That's when I started to really like him again.
That don't make no sense.
So right now, I would say, if I was to pick one or the other, I'm kind of leaning towards pro football, even though I love college football and I bleed college football. And, if you were to talk to my brother-in-law, who's, my best friend, as of right now, he'd say the only reason why I watch college football is because Denny talked me into it. And there's something to be said about that. There's so much passion in college football. One thing I love about college football is the momentum swings in college football. Games I can think of, for example, just most recently is last year, Nebraska versus Iowa. This year, Nebraska versus Iowa. And look at the momentum swings in those games and how one team was way ahead, Nebraska, and then Iowa came roaring back. And it got to be where it was a dogfight at the end. You didn't know who was going to win. So that's one reason why I do really like college football. You don't see that in the pros as much. But I like pro football for the fact of my team, the 49ers, can be so bad for 5-6 years and then come back and get a good draft and be good again, be relevant again. Right now, it's been 23 years since Nebraska has been relevant. I hope that they become relevant again soon, but there's a chance they might not either. It's not like you can get all these players out of the draft. You can get recruits and you can get transfer portals, but you just can't get the draft players like you can in pro. So that's what I like about pro. Brian, what do you think?
So growing up, I'm obviously younger than both of you guys, so everything's a little bit different for me. However, when I was younger, I didn't really watch much pro football. About the only pro football I watched was the Super Bowl, maybe a couple playoff games here and there, but when it was during the regular season, really didn't watch much pro football at all. So for me, then college was king for me. And of course, growing up in Nebraska, even if you're a Nebraska fan or not, Nebraska football. And it doesn't matter if you're a fan.
How did you end up as an Oregon fan? How did that happen?
Can you let me get there? Can you let me get there?
Calm down.
Just
It's
chill
okay.
out.
It's
Jeff.
okay.
And, as growing up in Nebraska, Nebraska football whether you care or not. Because Nebraska football is king in the state of Nebraska. Okay?
That's all there is.
Yeah, that's all there is. And that's why Nebraska was king. And I grew up probably until about the age of 10-ish, a Nebraska fan because I didn't know any better. Didn't know any better, because it was
So you were raised right.
It was beat into your mind, Nebraska
So you were
football.
raised right.
But, I was close enough to the Kansas line that I developed a liking for Kansas State. And the reason that is I had buddies that I went to school with, and I was right next to the Kansas line. So it easily could be done. So developed that liking for Kansas State. And Kansas State in the late 90s in 2000s, they were a good program.
They were a good program.
Bill Schneider.
I mean,
You have to
they're cheaters, but
you have to
yeah.
have respect for Bill Schneider.
Yeah,
He built that program twice
out of nothing. It
out of
took them
nothing.
from nothing.
You know, and one of the most underrated coaches in college football, in my opinion, is Bill Snyder. And then when I got into middle school, or actually into high school, is when I started following pro football a little bit more. That's when fantasy football was starting to come along. And fantasy football develops you into a pro football fan. Growing up, of course, Denver was my team because family ties. That's who I went to.
Right.
And I watched the Denver Super Bowl where they beat Green Bay, and then when they beat Atlanta. And that was the golden years for Denver for them few years there. And then when I went into high school,
That was a horrible little time period for NFL football.
no, it was great. It was great. One of the best quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah, John.
No.
John Elway.
He's top five quarterback.
No, we've had that discussion. No.
And then when I got into college, and this is where I became an Oregon fan. Okay, and
How old were you?
I was in college.
Old enough to know better.
I was in college. Actually, no. Take that back. I was a junior in high school.
Still old. enough to know
Junior in
better.
high school when that came around, and they played. Trying to remember who they played exactly, but it was in the Holiday Bowl. And back when he's retired now and out of there, but their AD Bakhtiar
Mike Bloody.
Bloody was the coach. And I really liked the way that they
you.
played. Really liked the way that they played. There was a new school offense. And of course, I'm younger, so new school appeals to me a little bit more scoring. And I just developed that fanship. And it hasn't gone wrong for me. Oregon's been a good program since then. They've had more success than Nebraska in the last 20 years.
For sure they have.
So they've been in the playoff twice. They had the golden years of Mariota when Mariota was there. And they
He just quit the NFL, just walked away.
that to be talked about another time.
Justin Herbert?
Yeah. But look what Oregon's developing now. Oregon's developing an all-around program in everything. They're starting to get good in everything, and that's what, when you're good at football, everything else comes around.
Yeah, and that football breeds money for your program.
Yes.
For your school, and that it helps to have a guy like Phil Knight be a big backer for you too.
Yes.
So what are you, Brian? Pro guy?
So that's
College guy?
I'm still getting to that
Let's
point.
get to that.
Jeff. Hold on,
Jeff.
it's your turn here in a little bit.
Pipe down, Jeff.
So I went through a stint where college football was what I tended to watch, and I didn't care who was playing, and it was just the emotion of the game. It's really hard to beat the emotion of college football and the ups and the downs, and this team could come out of nowhere this year and then they fall off next year. You just never know what you're going to get with college football. But now with the NIL money, I'm losing interest in college football to the level that I had. And the reason that is because to me, it's just turning into a development for
Semi-pro, yeah.
it's turning into a development for pro football. And I would have to say right now, I would much rather prefer to watch pro football than college football. I'll watch my Oregon Ducks. I watch the Huskers no matter if I'm a Husker fan or not.
That's because you live here. We don't give you a choice.
It's so I can talk crap against you guys. But anyway, I watch it no matter what, so I know what's going on.
Yeah. Here's one more thing that I'll say about college football before we get to Jeff is the pageantry of college football.
Yeah.
The bands and the tunnel walks, entrance themes, whatever, and just the fans and the tailgates and everything like that is very, very easy to get caught up in, and it's very exciting.
Yes. I will say that I would rather go. I've been to both. I went to a Nebraska game against Kansas State, and I went to a Broncos game against San Francisco. They both have the nostalgia. However, the atmosphere is not the same. The atmosphere of college football is completely different than pro football.
Absolutely.
And honestly, I've been to a few pro games now. And this year was my first 49ers game at Denver, and that was probably almost the closest to a college stadium that I've ever been in.
Yeah, because they bleed Denver football in Denver. So.
I do want to agree with you on the NIL money. The NIL is ruining college football.
And I will say one more point, and this is my ending point. I really think to counter the NIL takeaway from the game, I think the 12-team playoff will change it drastically. I think that'll bring back the college atmosphere a little bit. Yes.
Well, and I think it gives somebody something to recruit to other than just versus Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia and some of those teams. I mean, you can play at Kansas State, and now you got a chance to play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know, where before it was like, yeah, whatever, we're not in the top 4 team.
No.
You know, that's those other guys. We're not there.
It was a mistake having only a 4-team playoff.
Yeah, that was never the right move.
Yeah. And then bringing in NIL money completely changed college football.
Well, NIL money, remember, that wasn't the NCAA's fault. They lost several court cases in individual states that said that those players need to be paid. That was done by prima donna players reaching out trying to get a payday.
Kind of started by a former Nebraska player.
That's right, Keller.
Yeah, Keller.
I will say that
and
I don't have a problem with NIL money. What I have a problem with is that it's not governed.
It definitely needs to be governed.
For those of you that don't know what NIL means, it's name, image, and likeness.
Yes.
That is not paid by the universities.
Not paid by the universities, and if somebody is using something on a video game per se, and it shows number 9 and you're number 9 on that team, you can technically get paid for that.
Yes.
But the thing is, because it's not paid by the universities, it cannot be governed. If Jobo Pillow Factory out of Houston wants to pay the Houston quarterback $1 million to come play there, he can make $1 million to come play for Houston.
Yes.
You know,
Texas A&M last year is a prime example of
$32 million.
Looks like that worked out for them.
Yeah.
It did not work out.
Did not work out.
Still, they went out and spent $32 million on their team.
Yes.
NIL money is changing, and there are tweaks that have to be made. The NCAA and the universities have to step in because some universities are controlling NIL. They're not completely controlling it, but they have put together programs to collect the NIL money to help funnel it to the kids in an appropriate manner.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Where you play for Nebraska. If you're a lineman, you make $50,000 a year minimum.
Yeah.
Where other schools are letting you do it yourself, and there has to be some salary caps. There are 12 quarterbacks out there that made more than $1.5 million a year last year.
Stupid.
And
as a 20-year-old college kid.
Yeah, that isn't even guaranteed to play.
Yeah. So let me see if I get this straight. So I have a son that is going to college for biochemistry. He's getting his doctorate degree right now in biochemistry. He's not making $1 million a year. And let me tell you, he's going to be a heck of a lot smarter than any one of those guys playing football.
Wait a minute. 90,000 people don't show up on Saturday to watch him take a biology test either.
And which is very true. But
the NBC and ABC are not paying $150 billion a year to make sure that game that he's playing in is on their channel. That academics and sports, yes, are in college, and those college athletic students are students, but it's not the same. But let's not get into that argument because the academics are academics. They shouldn't get paid to be there. That's ridiculous. They have no appeal. They make no money for the university. They will not make money until they're out. And the good students that cut out of there and make big money after they get their graduate degrees or doctorate degrees, they donate back to the academic fund.
I agree with
Hopefully.
you.
Hopefully.
As a guy that was in the athletic training program at a college, I understand how much time it takes for these athletes to go through this.
Yeah.
And how much it takes away from them. However, I don't think that a college kid should be making $1 million+ a year
That was
to
the point
play
I
a
was getting
sport.
at.
I'm okay with them getting paid because they can't go work because they're tied up. They're tied up so much in.
But it should be stipends. It should be a career decision.
No, I just
The
think
fact that
should be-
Nebraska offers more money than Texas should be the reason why Casey Thompson came to Nebraska.
Yeah.
I agree with that, and I also just think, and again, a totally different subject, but you're getting your school paid for to play athletics at a school.
That used to be enough.
That used to be enough, and that was before tuition was $70 grand, $90 grand, $130 grand a
Yeah.
year. I'm 50 years old, and I still have college loans from my days in college. So, Jeff, I know you want to talk about some stuff.
I
What you
do,
want to talk about?
but first, finish your statement. You pro or college?
Right now, I'm pro.
Yeah.
To me, pro football is king. However, I think college could come back, but right now, I'm on pro.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
All right. Yes, I've been chomping at the bit for this conversation because you got pro, you got college, you got passion, you got money. And we just covered how money is now kind of clouding the college. But we're 2 years into that. So college is the passion from what you were born in. I didn't have a choice at birth if I was a Husker fan or not a Husker fan. Everyone I knew, everyone I hung out with, everyone that was neighbors, friends, everyone at the church, everyone at school were Husker fans. Saturdays, you dressed up in red, you went home, you watched a game. And, those were your kids. As a Nebraska fan, as I was growing up, 70% of the Huskers were made up from Nebraska. They were Nebraska kids. Every
From
count.
Broken Bow or
Yeah,
Atkinson.
absolutely. These were the kids that
O'Neill.
you went to school with.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if you were from Norfolk, Broken Bow, Omaha. It didn't matter where it was. These kids are kids you played with in high school. And they were. Nebraska was never a rich state. We're a bunch of farmers. We're hardworking, blue-collar people. And Nebraska was the same way. We weren't the best kids. We weren't the most talented. We worked hard, though. And we knew our jobs. And we hit the weight room. We had the best strength and conditioning program in the country. We were groundbreaking on how we did all that.
Yeah.
We were clean also. We didn't break the rules. We didn't pay players underneath the table. And if we did do an infraction, it was because Tom Osborne paid for a flight so a kid could go to his dad's funeral. That was our NCAA probations that we got on in the 80s. When we talked about that Clemson game when I was 12, we watched that on TV, and towards the end, 1:30 in the morning that same night, Nebraska was flying into Lincoln, and we were there at the airport, clapping for them. They lost. It wasn't a bad thing. They were representing us, and those kids represent us and who we were. Mm-hmm. And there was no flipping teams halfway through your life. You aren't born a Nebraska fan and then become a Kansas State fan or an Oregon fan or whoever looks flashy right now. That's not what you do, because those aren't your people. I'm a Nebraskan. I was born and raised here. That makes me a Nebraskan. And if you ever go to a Nebraska game, there's nothing like a college football game. the atmosphere.
The atmosphere is incredible.
I mean, so I was an Air Force brat. We bounced around a few states, but we ended up in Texas, and I ended up going to Texas games, owning season tickets for a while, and still the atmosphere at the Texas Longhorns still blew away anything that happened at a Dallas game, anything that happened at Arrowhead Stadium or up in New York at the Giant. I mean, the passion of the fans. They weren't hateful. They were loving. They were supportive. It was kind of like watching your kids go play at the high school level. You were there to support.
Yeah.
And
There's
everyone.
a lot of pride there.
It was pride.
Yeah.
It was about pride.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been about pride. And even though Nebraska hasn't been good for 20 years, I still feel that pride when I watch them run out on the field.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And the hair in my arm still stands up when
Absolutely.
when
When
Tom Walk song comes on.
When Sirius comes on, it moves me.
Yeah.
It moves me every time. And when Nebraska scores and you see it, man, the ground go like this and the crowd go wild, there's nothing like Lincoln, Nebraska on a Husker day. I am college 100%. I am Nebraska 100%. Like he said, I will watch other college games because of how it affects Nebraska. And because they've been bad, I haven't watched a lot of other college games, but I don't miss a Husker game. And every Husker Saturday, I know there's hope that we may rule the day. But even as mad as I get when we lose, I'm still a Husker every minute, every day, and I will defend them 100%. And, it's part of a life.
Yeah.
People, I can't even explain it. I don't know how to put it to words. It is part of me. It's part of my life. It physically affects me when we lose. It physically affects me when we win. I love more. I smile more when we win. I'm a little more grumpy. I'm a little more disenchanted when we lose. But at the end of the day, I look forward to every Husker game.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit if it's a spring game. I don't care if it's against Northwest Missouri State.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been married to my wife for 20 years now, and she would call me because in the car business, so I work every Saturday. She would call me on Saturday just to check my temperature to see how I was if Nebraska lost.
and all I got to say is, go Big Red! Go Big Red! And tonight, that's our show. 1 college, 2 pro.
Yep, and we are the Couch Coaches,
And we know sports.